picture this, you are staring down at a math problem.
Oh, yeah. A familiar feeling for a lot of people.
Right. Maybe it's a certification exam, or maybe you're just trying to help your kid with their middle school homework, or even just trying to calculate a tip at a noisy restaurant with the waiter just sort of hovering there.
The worst pressure.
Exactly. You look at the numbers and suddenly your brain just goes completely blank. I mean, a total, absolute void.
Like the power just got cut.
Yes.
Yeah.
It is like hitting a mental brick wall at 60 miles an hour. You read the same sentence 5 times, and none of it computes. And, well, we have all been there.
Oh, absolutely. Every single one of us.
So today, the mission of this deep dive is to explore the cognitive science behind exactly why that happens. Because we're going to unpack a bit of a secret here.
A really important secret, yeah.
The awful feeling of shutting down. It is not a personal failure, and it has absolutely nothing to do with your intelligence.
It really doesn't.
Mm-hmm.
And, I always look forward to talking about this because no one ever told you this when you were in school. Like, we're all conditioned to think that going blank means we're just not math people.
Right, like you're missing some math gene or something.
Exactly, or that you lack some fundamental capability. But what we're looking at here is a very real, very biological reality. In cognitive science, it has a specific name. It's called cognitive overload.
Cognitive overload.
Yeah, it is not a character flaw. It's basically a mechanical limit of your neurological hardware.
Okay, so let's define this mechanical limit. Whenever I try to picture what is happening in the brain during these moments, I usually think of a tiny temporary mental scratch pad.
The scratch pad is a great way to look at it.
Because your brain has a massive hard drive for long-term storage, sure, but the space where you actually do the active thinking, your working memory, that seems incredibly small.
Small is almost an understatement, honestly. Decades of research, going back to George Miller in the 1950s, and heavily updated by modern cognitive load theory, show that an adult's working memory can typically hold only 3 to 7 discrete items at a time.
Wait, hold on. Just 3 to 7 items.
There's 3 to 7 chunks of information, yeah.
That can't be right, can it? Because, I can memorize a 10-digit phone number or recite my whole grocery list from memory without writing it down. How does that square with a hard biological limit of 7 things?
Well, that is the illusion of what we call chunking. When you memorize a phone number, you don't actually remember 10 separate isolated digits.
I don't.
No, your brain groups the 3-digit area code into a single item or a chunk. The next 3 numbers become another chunk. So you are still working within that limit of 3 to 7 slots. You've just packed more data into a single slot.
Oh, wow. Okay, that makes sense.
Yeah, so think of working memory, not just as a scratch pad, but maybe as a tiny waiting room with only 5 chairs. Your long-term memory is the massive office building behind it, but all new information, it has to sit in those 5 chairs first.
Before it can get processed and sent into the building.
Precisely. And furthermore, it can only sit in those chairs for about 30 seconds before that data rapidly decays and vanishes, unless you actively rehearse it.
Okay, that visual helps a lot. 5 chairs, 30 seconds.
Now, consider what mathematics demands of that waiting room. Math requires juggling multiple interacting elements simultaneously.
Right. You've got the numbers, the symbols.
Abstract numbers, operational symbols, positive and negative signs, procedural rules, all while trying to hold on to the ultimate goal of the problem.
That is a lot of people for 5 chairs.
Exactly. You essentially have 10 complex concepts trying to rush into a waiting room with only 5 chairs. When the demand exceeds the capacity of that room, the internal fire marshal steps in and, well, initiates a protective shutdown.
Okay, so what does this all mean for how we actually learn? If everyone has the same tiny waiting room, why does math specifically trigger this fire marshal response more often than, say, reading a dense history book or trying to learn the rules of a complex board game?
That's the core question, isn't it?
Yeah. Is the math itself uniquely hostile to the brain, or is it an issue with how it's presented?
It's a combination, but the presentation is frequently where the real damage is done. This brings us to a foundational concept called cognitive load theory.
Okay, let's get into it.
So this framework distinguishes between 2 main types of mental effort when you're learning something new. First, you have your intrinsic load. That is the inherent, unavoidable difficulty of the material itself.
Like the actual raw math.
Right. Solving a multivariable calculus equation just naturally requires more mental juggling than adding 2 plus 2.
Yeah.
We can't change the intrinsic load. It is what it is.
Yes, the mountain is just tall.
Exactly. But the second type is where things go completely off the rails, and that's the extraneous load.
Extraneous meaning like the unnecessary mental friction.
Precisely that. Extraneous load is the unnecessary mental effort imposed by how the information is designed, formatted, or presented. It basically wastes precious chairs in your waiting room.
Give me an example of that.
Okay, let me give you a classic example from the research. It's known as the split attention effect.
Oh, let me guess. Is this when you are trying to assemble furniture and the diagram of the bookshelf is on page 2, but the actual text instructions referencing part A and screw B are over on page 5?
That is the ultimate real-world application of it, yes.
It's the worst.
It really is.
Yeah.
And in an educational setting, it happens constantly in textbooks. You have a complex geometric diagram on one side of the page, and the text explaining it is tucked away in a dense paragraph on the other side.
Oh, I remember those textbooks.
Right, so your working memory isn't just processing the math anymore. It is actively wasting cognitive capacity on a visual search and match mission.
Because you're looking back and forth.
Exactly. You hold a piece of the text in your head, scan the diagram to find the corresponding angle or label, and by the time you find it, well, those 30 seconds are up.
You've forgotten the next step of the text.
Yep. It's a massive, unnecessary drain on your working memory.
So in that case, you aren't failing at the math at all. You are failing at the terrible layout of the textbook. The layout is stealing your chairs.
100%.
What else causes this extraneous load?
Another major culprit is a lack of what we call automaticity in basic foundational facts.
Automaticity. So like things you just know automatically.
Right. Let's say a student is trying to solve a multi-step algebra problem, but they haven't fully automated their basic multiplication tables.
Okay.
So when they encounter, say, 7 times 8 in the middle of the equation, they have to stop and consciously calculate it. They might count on their fingers or mentally add 8 7 times.
Oh, I see where this is going. If you have to dedicate active thought to 7 times 8, that basic calculation suddenly hogs all the available space in the waiting room.
It boots everything else out. Because the working memory capacity is so strictly limited, the cognitive effort of calculating 56 completely wipes the broader algebraic logic of the problem from their mind.
The actual new concept they're supposed to be learning is just left outside in the rain.
Exactly. They hit the bottleneck, the fire marshal steps in, and the brain shuts down before they can even return to the algebra.
This is where things really start to click for me. Understanding that the brain is genuinely mechanically overloaded. It completely changes how we view human reactions to difficult tasks.
It really does.
Because when that overload hits, people usually react in ways that get labeled as quitting, apathy, or, acting out.
We fundamentally have to reframe those labels. Like, the task is poorly designed for your working memory limits, but your brain is functioning exactly as it evolved to function under a threat.
So it's doing its job.
Yes. Your brain isn't broken, it's protecting you.
Let's talk about the biology of that threat. Why does the brain treat a math problem like a physical danger? I mean, why would the internal fire marshal shut down our logic center instead of just trying harder?
Well, from an evolutionary standpoint, the brain's primary job is survival, and it is highly efficient at routing energy to where it's needed most. When cognitive load exceeds capacity, the brain experiences a surge of stress.
Okay, stress.
And the amygdala, which is the brain's ancient fear center, it doesn't neatly distinguish between the cognitive threat of a failing math grade and the physical threat of a predator in the woods.
Wow, really? It treats them the same.
It just detects overwhelming stress and sounds the alarm. So when the amygdala hijacks the system, it physically routes blood flow and electrical activity away from the prefrontal cortex.
And the prefrontal cortex is where we do all our complex reasoning, right? Our logical problem solving.
Yes. The evolutionary logic is simple. If a tiger is chasing you, your brain doesn't want you wasting precious metabolic energy doing complex calculations or deep philosophical thinking.
That would be a bad time for philosophy, yeah.
Exactly. It diverts all resources to your muscles and your stress response systems so you can survive. You physiologically cannot do the math in that moment because the hardware required to do it is temporarily offline.
That is wild. So when a parent or a teacher sees a kid acting out, they are actually watching a biological fight, flight, or freeze response in real time.
That's exactly what it is.
The sources we reviewed outline very specific behavioral manifestations of this shutdown. They call them studenting behaviors, like the coping mechanisms we deploy to survive cognitive overload.
Yeah, these are fascinating. The most common one is the classic freeze response.
Right.
We call it the space out.
The space out.
This is the person who stares blankly at a single page for 20 minutes without making a single mark. They aren't daydreaming about the weekend. Their neurological system is just locked up.
A variation of that freeze response has to be perfectionist paralysis. I've seen this happen.
Oh, yes.
Someone will write a number, erase it, write it again, erase it until there is literally a physical hole worn through the paper. They look busy, but they're just looping on the very first step.
They are terrified to commit. The cognitive load is already so high that the mental bandwidth required to recover from a potential mistake just isn't there. So they freeze in motion.
Wow.
But the amygdala hijack doesn't just cause freezing. It also pumps the body full of adrenaline. That leads to the flight response, which produces the escape artist.
The sudden urgent need to be absolutely anywhere else.
You see this the exact moment an instructor says, okay, begin your independent work.
Oh, yeah.
Suddenly, the student has an absolute emergency. They need to sharpen a pencil right now, or they absolutely must go to the bathroom, or they drop their binder so they have to spend 10 minutes reorganizing their papers on the floor.
Right. It looks like avoidance.
And it is avoidance,
Yeah.
but it's a physical flight from a perceived cognitive threat.
Okay. And then there is the fawning response, the one that I think tricks observers the most. The chameleon.
The chameleon is fascinating, really. This student will nod along enthusiastically, maintain great eye contact, write down exactly what is written on the board.
And perfectly mimic total understanding.
Exactly. But they are absorbing absolutely nothing. The cognitive load is completely overwhelming, so they are just surviving the social interaction by blending in.
Like, if I smile, maybe they won't realize I'm lost.
Right. They are hoping that if they look engaged enough, no one will call on them to explain the why behind the numbers they are copying.
I feel like we've all been the chameleon at some point. And look, if you are listening to this and you have ever found yourself staring at a wall or needing a sudden snack break the second a spreadsheet gets complicated, your nervous system was just protecting you from an overwhelming task.
It's totally normal.
But knowing this brings up a huge question. If we know the brain isn't broken, but the working memory is just maxed out, how do we actually bypass the bottleneck?
Right. What do we do about it?
Yeah, how do we stop the fire marshal from shutting the building down?
We restructure the task. The foundational strategy here is decomposition.
Decomposition. Okay.
When you are faced with a massive, complex equation or a terrifying project, you cannot look at it as a single entity. The intrinsic load of the whole thing is just too high.
Too much for the 5-chair.
Way too much. You have to actively break it down into a series of smaller, climbable hills. You segment the information so that you are only ever asking your waiting room to process one tiny piece at a time.
I always like to call this avoiding the pizza eating problem.
The pizza eating problem.
Yeah, like if you try to swallow an entire large pizza in one bite, you are going to choke. It's physically impossible. You have to take a pizza cutter, slice it up into 8 pieces, and just focus on one bite of one slice at a time.
That is a perfect analogy.
Yeah.
You have to slice up the math.
And eventually, the whole pizza is gone.
Exactly. And to help you digest those slices without overwhelming your system, you utilize a strategy called cognitive offloading.
Cognitive offloading.
Remember, your internal waiting room only holds about 5 chairs. So the trick is to externalize your working memory. Use your physical environment to hold the data for you.
Let the paper do the storing so your brain can do the processing.
Exactly. Do not try to hold intermediate numbers or steps in your mind. Write down every single partial calculation.
Don't trust your brain to hold it.
Right. Use visual aids. Draw out a rough picture of the problem. If you have a sequence of actions, create micro checklists.
Micro checklists, like how small?
And by micro, I mean just 2 or 3 steps, like step 1, read the prompt. Step 2, highlight the numbers. By putting the information out into the physical environment, you free up those precious chairs in your mental waiting room for actual logical reasoning.
But what about word problems? Because, word problems seem perfectly designed to trigger the amygdala hijack.
Oh, they are. They really are.
There's just so much text, and usually a bunch of irrelevant information thrown in just to confuse you.
Word problems are the ultimate cognitive overload trap because they force you to mix linguistic processing like reading comprehension with mathematical processing.
It's 2 separate loads.
Exactly. To bypass this, the sources outline a fantastic research-backed strategy called the 3 reads protocol.
3 reads protocol.
It is designed specifically to stop that impulsive panic and force you to slow down and chunk the information over time. Instead of rushing to grab the numbers and guess at an operation, you read the problem 3 separate times, with a completely different goal for each read.
Wait, so during that first read, am I completely ignoring the numbers, just reading it like a fiction book?
That is exactly the goal. The first read is entirely about context. You read the paragraph and you just ask yourself, what is this story about?
Just getting the vibe.
You aren't doing any math. You're just visualizing the scenario. Is it about a train traveling across the country? Is it about buying apples at a grocery store? You're just building a mental model of the situation without any pressure to solve it.
Okay, so I've got the story in my head. I know we're talking about trains. What happens on the second read?
The second read shifts your focus to the structure. Now you ask, what are the specific numbers or quantities involved?
Ah, so now we look at the data.
Right. And you identify them. Okay, the train is going 60 miles an hour and it travels for 3 hours. You are just identifying the pieces on the board. You still aren't trying to find the answer.
I love how this dismantles the panic. You are giving your brain permission to ignore the terrifying big picture. So the third read must be where we actually do the math.
The third read is about planning, you ask. What mathematical question could I ask here? What am I actually trying to solve?
And by then, it's not scary anymore.
By the time you reach this step, you have completely neutralized the threat. You haven't triggered a shutdown because you never asked your brain to process the story, find the numbers, and formulate an equation all at the exact same time.
You slice the pizza?
You slice the pizza. It transitions you out of that destructive, fearful shutdown phase and moves you into what educators call productive struggle.
Productive struggle.
Yes, and productive struggle is a vital concept.
Mhm.
We don't want learning to be effortless because, if it's effortless, you aren't actually acquiring new skills.
Right, you're not lifting any mental weights.
Exactly. We want you in that sweet spot where the challenge is high, but the cognitive support like chunking and offloading is also high. This productive struggle is biologically necessary for long-term retention.
How so? What is physically changing in the brain when we stay in that sweet spot instead of shutting down?
Well, when you engage in effortful productive struggle, you stimulate the production of a substance called myelin.
Myelin, okay.
Your brain is made up of billions of neurons connected by pathways. When you learn something new, the electrical signal traveling down those pathways is initially slow and clunky.
Like driving on a dirt road.
Great analogy, yes. It's like a dirt road. But as you push through that friction, without triggering the amygdala hijack specialized cells in your brain, begin wrapping those neural pathways in myelin, which is a fatty protective sheath.
Like the rubber insulation around a copper electrical wire?
It acts exactly like insulation. The thicker the myelin sheath, the faster and more efficient the electrical signals travel. You are literally turning slow dirt path neural connections into high-speed paved freeways.
Oh, wow.
And the struggle itself is the mechanism that signals the brain to build the freeway.
So the struggle isn't a sign that you are inherently bad at the subject. The struggle is the physical sensation of your brain upgrading its own hardware.
Beautifully put, yes.
But that upgrade only happens if you manage the cognitive load so you stay in the productive zone.
Precisely. If you let the load exceed your capacity and trigger a shutdown, the building of that freeway stops instantly.
Man, that makes so much sense. So what does this all mean for us? Let's bring everything we've uncovered together here.
Let's do it.
If you take one core insight away from this deep dive, let it be this. If your brain shuts down, it is a signal, not a failure. It is simply a check engine light flashing on your mental dashboard telling you that your working memory waiting room is completely full.
It's just a capacity issue.
Right. When that happens, you don't need to question your intelligence. You need to take a breath, step back, and offload. Get the data out of your head and onto the physical paper.
Absolutely.
Slice the intimidating problem up into tiny, climbable hills. Use tools like the 3 reads protocol to focus on just one layer of reality at a time. It is never about being a math person. It is entirely about respecting the architectural limits of your own mind.
I think that captures the essence of the science perfectly. And, to build on that, I want to leave you with a final thought to ponder as you go about your week.
Oh, I like a good final thought.
We've spent this time exploring how the split attention effect and the strict 5-chair limits of working memory cause massive mental shutdowns in a learning environment. But consider how this exact same cognitive architecture operates in your adult daily life.
Outside the classroom, you mean?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Think about your modern digital environment. Think about the constant, exhausting toggling between your email inbox, a complex financial spreadsheet, 3 different team chat windows, and the notifications constantly buzzing on your phone.
I'm getting stressed just thinking about it.
Right. Could it be that familiar afternoon brain fog or that sudden inexplicable urge to procrastinate and go reorganize your entire kitchen instead of finishing your report? Could that actually be the exact same working memory bottleneck?
The escape artist.
Exactly. Could your everyday professional exhaustion simply be cognitive overload, masquerading as a lack of willpower?
That is a staggering parallel to consider. The waiting room is just as small at the office as it is in the classroom. You're just trying to force emails and spreadsheets into those chairs instead of fractions and variables. It's the exact same hardware.
Wow. Next time you hit that mental brick wall, whether it's over a geometry problem, a Tuesday afternoon project, or just a chaotic inbox, remember,
Oh.
your brain isn't broken. Your waiting room is just full. Take a breath, slice up the pizza, and start writing things down.